I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
That's how this moment ends. On a personal shot, on public humiliation, on silence. But how did we get here? Jordan Peterson, guy known for dismantling bad arguments with surgical precision, completely shuts down in front of 20 atheists after being asked the one question every Christian should have a straight answer to. Not a trick. Not some deep theological dilemma, just, are you a Christian? And the moment he hesitates, it all falls apart. Now maybe you've seen the clip. Maybe you've already made up your mind. But what happened here wasn't just awkward. It exposed something way more important than most people realise. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Peterson said what he said, why it matters, and what it reveals. Not just about him, but about all of us. Because this wasn't a debate fail. This was a key moment. And we're about to dissect it.
How did they regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
We're breaking this down in 3 parts. This is the first. Overthinking faith is how you lose the moment. Peterson didn't fumble because he doesn't believe. In fact, it's the opposite. He probably saw the trap coming and tried to play it smart. You can almost see the calculation on his face. He's thinking, if I say yes, they'll hit me with contradictions. If I say no, I undermine everything I've built. So he freezes. He overcomplicates it. And instead of answering, he tries to reframe the question in his own terms. That's where everything breaks. Jordan is wired to dissect things. He's made a career out of going deeper than everyone else in the room. But in this case, it worked against him. He tried to navigate around a setup when what was needed was a straight line. Are you a Christian? Yes or no? And to be clear, I don't think he was dodging out of fear. I think he was trying to be too careful, too exact. Like he didn't want to say the wrong thing and misrepresent the faith. But in trying to protect it, he complicated it to death. And this is the trap a lot of smart people fall into. They study the Bible, theology, philosophy, church history. They build this huge intellectual structure around God. But then someone asks them the most basic question, and they freeze. Not because they don't know, but because they've forgotten how to answer simply. Faith can be deep. But when the moment comes, it has to be clear. That's what slipped here. And it mattered. Not because Peterson failed some test, but because silence, especially from someone this influential, always says something whether you mean it to or not. Next, we'll look at what actually triggered this whole thing. The weak argument that baited Peterson into the overthinking spiral to begin with.
Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
The reason this whole thing fell apart wasn't just because Jordan overthought it. It's because he saw a trap being set, and he took the bait. Here's what actually happened. Earlier in the debate, Peterson gave his definition of worship.
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Attending to, prioritizing, and sacrificing for something. Solid definition. Then the guy across from him, Danny, goes straight for it. He asks if Catholics do those things for Mary.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
And Jordan says, yeah, in some sense, they do. That's where the trap gets laid. Danny's trying to push him into a contradiction. If Catholics prioritize Mary, pray to her, and honour her with that level of attention, then according to Peterson's own definition, they must be worshipping her. And if that's true, then either Peterson is supporting idolatry by going to Catholic Mass, or his definition of worship doesn't hold up. That's the setup. And it's not a good one, because it oversimplifies a pretty well-known distinction in Christian theology: veneration versus worship. Catholics honour Mary. They don't worship her like they worship God. You can debate whether they blur the line too much, but it's not a gotcha. It's just a category difference. So the argument isn't deep, it's technical. And it's not about finding truth. It's about poking holes in someone else's logic and trying to make them look inconsistent. And Jordan saw it. You can tell. He immediately starts pushing back, asking why the Immaculate Conception is even relevant, trying to redirect, but it was too late. The trap had already worked. The conversation turned from serious to adversarial. At that point, Peterson wasn't engaging with a fellow thinker. He was dealing with someone who was treating the whole thing like a debate game. Like if he could just score the right rhetorical hit, he'd win. And that's when the tone snapped. Jordan didn't want to play. The irony is, if he had just ignored the setup and answered the question directly, none of this would have happened. But because he tried to outmaneuver it, he overcomplicated everything and lost the moment that mattered. In the next section, we're going to talk about why that happens. Why smart people, especially the ones who care the most, sometimes blow it at exactly the wrong time.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
This is the part a lot of people don't want to admit, especially people who study the Bible, follow thinkers like Peterson, read the commentaries, dive into the symbolism, the Hebrew, the philosophy, all of it. There's a real risk that the deeper you go, the harder it gets to answer basic questions with basic language. And that's exactly what happened here. Jordan wasn't lying. He wasn't denying Christ. He wasn't trying to dodge the truth. He was trying to be precise, careful, maybe even humble. But when you over-intellectualize the faith and treat every word like a potential landmine, you eventually forget how to speak it clearly. Are you a Christian? That's not a trick question. It doesn't need a nuanced definition of logos or a sidebar about doctrine. It just needs a yes. But if you've built your whole framework on dissecting truth instead of declaring it, that question suddenly feels like too much. Like you need a disclaimer, a paragraph, an exception clause, and that's where people stumble. Not because they don't believe, but because they've wrapped their faith in so much explanation that they forgot how to just confess it. This happens to a lot of smart, well-meaning people, and the more public you are, the more pressure you feel to get it right instead of just getting it out. But faith isn't about having the perfect answer. It's about standing on the right one. And sometimes that's all people are looking for. Clarity, conviction, not a theological essay, just a real answer. We'll wrap this up next, because all of this leads to one final question, not about Peterson, about you.
Could you help me connect that to the prompt?
Sure, I can help you connect it to the prompt. Peterson hesitated. He got hit with a setup, overthought the moment, and lost clarity when it mattered most. And yeah, it looked bad, but here's the truth. This video was never really about him. It's about you. Because you're not going to be asked, what's your stance on Marian veneration? You're going to be asked the same thing he was. Are you a Christian? And in that moment, it won't matter how much you've read. It won't matter how many sermons you've watched, podcasts you've clipped, or how many hours you've spent overthinking your theology. It'll come down to whether you're willing to say it, clearly, publicly, with no disclaimers. Jesus is Lord. That's it. And if a guy as smart and sincere as Peterson can fumble that moment, then maybe you're not as ready as you think you are. So get ready, because someone's going to ask you. And when they do, you don't get extra credit for being careful. You just need to be clear. Say the name.
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons I just described.